The Chicago Bears kicked their season off with a win last night in a 21-17 huge Hall of Fame fisticuff that was called early due to rain. We'll take you through everything that mattered and maybe everything that didn't, plus a couple extra scenarios that you should keep your eye on as we get into everything on this episode of Bear With Us. What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to Bear With Us, a Chicago Bears podcast hosted by yours truly, Robert Schmitz, editor-in-chief of the Bears blog, right here with my co-host, Nick Whalen of Football Guys. Nick, we had a game last night. What'd you think?
Well, I tweeted this morning, I said, Bears have the best record in the NFL. Like, just to have fun, but...
It's never going to change.
I mean, with no starters out there, I get it, but it was fun. Football's going on. We get to see some of these young guys, some guys fighting for camp spots. You get to see the sidelines, the new offense. I mean, what's not to like?
It's so funny, too, because I can't help but feel like when we're looking at the offense and the defense, there's only so much you can take from all of this. Schematically speaking, they'll show you the bones of the offense. All right, so
vanilla.
to use an example, Bears fan, they can't just trot out a bunch of brand new formations and plays that they're never going to run during the season. These plays are going to be run during the season. They're just not any of the plays on plays. They're not any of the complex stuff. This is foundational to the point of being stale, usually, is what I've seen people trot out in the preseason. So you're going to get your basic cover two zone with no variation on defense. And oh boy, Nick, did they trot out that cover two plenty last night.
Oh, wow.
You're going to get some of the basic or standard formations within the Bears run game and offense, but they're not going to do too many motions, and they're not going to do anything that isn't fairly standard and out of the box when it comes to offense. I say this because they don't have time to practice useless stuff. Nobody's trying that hard to decoy in the preseason, but they aren't going to use anything that they think is good, nuanced, or innovative either, because they don't want it on tape. So, Nick, I feel like it is a delicate balance between you can read in some of the greater philosophies of what these coaches are going to try to do, but you can't get too deep in the specifics. You know what I mean?
Well, the other part of it too is the players practicing the most complex stuff are the ones, not the 2s, 3s, and 4s that we're seeing. Like, they get less reps at this, y'all. So, but I do want to dive in a little bit in terms of the offensive scheme because it is, new with Waldron. I liked what I saw because, again, we know the numbers. I mean, we know that, they've had bad O-lines in Seattle, but he's been what was like 12th in EPA over 3 years. But I saw a lot of play action, like that run game and pass game married with play action. I saw, and I love this, Robert, I saw pulling guards on play action plays, which is top tier because the linebackers come up. And I saw, the outside zone, but also some toss with that too, so they can cut back and it makes it a little bit quicker. They get the ball in their hands. So I liked what I saw. Again, deep shots. From what I have from my numbers, the deep pass rate over 3 years was the third highest in the NFL. We saw that last night too. So I'm excited. I mean, if Brett Rippon and Tyson Bagent can get that done, I wonder what Caleb Williams can to our elite receivers.
Same. And it's funny you talk about the run game tendencies, man. It was the pass game tendencies that really popped to me because this offense is willing to throw. They got into empty sets on 3rd and short, 3rd and medium, and 3rd and long. And when they throw, they're not just trying to work the flat. They're not only sticking to timing routes. They're comfortable working spatial attack routes like seam routes up the middle, crossers that get things open. I couldn't tell you exactly whether it was Y cross or not, but you got a couple great looks over the middle as well as down the sideline. The ball felt well spread across the field, especially when Brett Rippon was commanding the offense. Rippon, I should say. But all this to say, Nick, I thought the offense felt fresh. It felt like they wanted to attack, and I know it's silly to say this, but yes, in the preseason, I appreciate that the offensive coordinator saw a 2-score deficit and said, all right, well, let's get the ball in the air then. They didn't stick with the run game because of philosophy and principle. They saw that they were getting ground, passing the ball, and so they continued to pass the ball. And I don't know if this is a trend. It's one football game. It's not even a full football game. We didn't get a fourth quarter, but it's nice to see, right? Three,
Yeah.
three, what felt like straight touchdown drives, maybe one hiccup in the middle. That's fun. That's fun football to watch.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And you could see the drop off too, because I liked Brett Rippon out of Boise State. I was a fan out of college, and he's bounced around a little bit. He's got some experience. Bajent obviously has some experience. Davis Mills had some experience. But when those, well, in Case Keenum too. And then when Austin Reed came in, it was like, check down, short pass. Like you could just tell the confidence wasn't there.
Yep.
And something that I'm not sure everyone saw, the first deep ball to Colin Johnson that got caught on the sideline, which I think you could debate if they challenged that one. I don't know if it was going to be a catch or not either. Okay, go back and watch it. But I saw the ball maybe move a little bit. Um, there was a defender in Rippon's face, and he still let it
Oh,
go.
yeah.
And it was Jake Curran, I believe, the guy I wanted to see at right tackle just got beat inside. And I mean, again, delivering with a guy in your grill is top notch. I liked his pocket presence, Rippon, in terms of he moved and navigated. Like after the overturned Colin Johnson reception, the next play, he steps up and then he finds one of the tight ends over the middle. I think it was Bates for that long, conversion. And it's like, okay, this is good. I mean, this is, hey, we're not just like, run the ball, throw a quick thing, or get nervous and check down. Like we're letting things develop. And again, then we get to see and highlight the tight ends, Colin Johnson, everybody else too.
Plus, I mean, I don't want to take too much from this. We don't know that this is going to be a schematic consistency. But the fact that Rippon found that tight end over the middle reflected that the tight end was there at all. I mean, I felt like there were a few too many moments, especially in scramble drill scenarios, where last year the Bears receivers were all on the sidelines or they were all in the same place. Most
Mhm.
of them deep with a couple of them shallow, all on the right-hand side of the field. And that could have had to do with limitations in terms of who was playing quarterback. You had two guys that wanted to read about half of the field. We don't need to get into that too far.
No.
But I appreciate the fact that Rippon picked up one first down with his legs. And the next time, as soon as the linebacker challenged him, he dumped it off to somebody who turned up field and picked up extra yards. Football
Mhm.
looks extra easy when it's easy.
Ah,
And
yeah.
like Rippon made it look really easy. Now, I do want to bring one thing up. Rippon was spitting fire. There's no need to take away anything from what he was doing last night. He was lacing it. I have seen a lot of people who I can't help but feel like are yearning for a storyline turn this into a QB2 competition. And y'all, I'm not trying to tell you Tyson Bagent has anything guaranteed to him, but Tyson got the green light to throw all of three passes, one of which was a screen, another that turned into a throwaway, and the only remaining pass was a quick pass for a first down. This is not the PJ Walker performance we saw last year, where Walker was playing his way out of a job yet. Maybe there's a QB2 competition. We're talking about two UDFA background quarterbacks that are 2-2 in their NFL starts. So as far as draftable prospect, etc., same mold. But I will say, Nick, it was a little wild to me seeing how many people wanted to make a grandiose statement about the Hall of Fame game, given that I don't know. What did you think?
Well, I thought we were gonna get a half of Tyson Bagent, and we didn't. So that
Right?
was the one thing that surprised me a bit. But, I mean, I think let's look at this from a bigger scheme or a grander, kind of a view. We have a good 3rd quarterback. Like, this is a good thing, y'all. Instead of having this like, "Okay, who's gonna win the quarterback 2?" Which I think it's Tyson Bagent by a margin, y'all. Um, again, remember having that 3rd quarterback can be that emergency guy, and if it comes to that, you have a guy that can be okay. Now, again, if looking at Rippon overall, he does not have a strong arm. I know Bajent doesn't either, but it's stronger than Rippon's, and that's part of it. Now, again, as you saw last night, timing and accuracy and placement matter a lot more than arm strength. But I think Bajent's a better athlete. Obviously, he's with the twos right now with the coaches, so I mean, he's been getting more reps. So I think people need to take a step back. The throwaway you talked about too. I mean, I think to tie in a little bit, it was a play action with Tyler Scott coming underneath, and Tyler Scott got bumped. I mean, I was disappointed in Tyler Scott last night. He's a guy I was excited to look forward to. The kickoff returns, I know it's a new thing, I actually don't mind it in terms of I think it's going to get more returns in there. Um, I know he lost his footing, y'all. I know people are like, he had no vision. It was like the second one, literally, he ran into the first guy that was there, and the first guy was like 3 yards ahead of anybody else. Like, you used to be a running back. You can't just like cut off of that. Um, I think maybe he twisted his ankle a little bit. He got bumped on the one there too. The jet sweep that he got, he didn't look like he was going full speed. I don't know what was going on with him, but I wasn't super impressed with Tyler Scott last night.
I may sound like a tinfoil conspiracy theorist, but if there was one constant that I saw last night, it was that nobody could plant. Nobody could
Yeah,
plant.
that's true too.
And especially for athletes like DBs who all got hosed. Y'all, think about it. It wasn't just Davis Mills that was throwing flames. Brett Ripien obviously comes in and everybody's open. I mean, it felt like if you ran a stick and nod and the linebacker leaned on his front foot at all, he was not going to compete
Mhm.
with anything that was any deeper. And we saw that throughout the game. I even remember a one specific play action rep with Brett Rippon where he almost lost his footing at the top of the pocket. And
Mhm.
of all of the athletes on the field, the quarterback shouldn't be losing his cleats because he's just not even running that fast. So I don't want Nick to take away from what you're saying because I agree. I think Tyler Scott did not exactly look like a guy that could step into a wide receiver one role if it was needed, which we kind of knew. But I'm even meaning archetypally. You know what I'm saying, Nick? Where
Yeah.
a Colin Johnson type is the type that if you can throw him a Gawagi ball down the sidelines, then he can be your primary target and you can fit everything else around him. With Scott, they tried to make him the number one option, albeit in a more gadget oriented way, and the offense just did not flow like you would have wanted it to.
Mhm.
But I do think that there's got to be a grain of salt with this game in particular,
Oh, for
because
sure.
especially with it, we can't do, I don't want to do the thing where we say, wow, the offense looked incredible. They were open everywhere. The defense looked terrible. They left everybody open everywhere and not acknowledge the elephant in the room that the surface may have played a factor in
Yeah.
everybody's performance.
Well, I think more to that, good decision to not play the starters, right? Like if we're worried and we don't want injuries and all that kind of stuff going on, this is exactly why something like that doesn't happen. I mean, yeah, and I agree with you. The surface wasn't great for Tyler Scott. To go a little bit deeper, I know people are going to be super hyped about Colin Johnson. He didn't catch those balls clean, y'all. Like if you want to be that big dude posting up against better DBs than he was doing it, I want you to catch those clean. Um, Kind of moving a step forward, the running backs. Okay, I was surprised. I from what I thought we weren't going to see Roshan or Khalil, or obviously Swift, but we saw two of them. I thought Roshan looked decent in the scheme. He looked a little bit more back to his normal self prior to the
I thought
concussion
so.
last year. And then I made the joke of it. I was like, man, if there's something I need to see in the second quarter, it's Khalil Herbert carries. That was a little surprising to me. And so if we want to dive a little bit deeper into that one, obviously he looked good again, back from the high ankle sprain last year. Um, Him getting carries after Roshan Johnson's interesting. Also, him getting carries at all in the preseason is interesting because he's proven. Getting them in the second quarter, um, could they be, trying to dangle it out here? Hey, look how good he looks for trade bait. Is that part of this?
Dude, I don't know. Maybe, right? I say that because playing him third set in the preseason, like obvious third guy on the depth chart, is something. You know, he came out of the game relatively soon, so he could very well have earned like more rest after that, especially because he was very efficient in all of his carries. But we've
Mhm.
also always known that about Khalil Herbert.
Sure.
If there's a running back in the NFL that is specialized for running the football, it is Khalil Herbert, who does not catch it very well, does not block very well, but when you hand him the rock, he can carry it. I also think Herbert, man, comparing Herbert and Roshan is so funny. I did think Roshan looked more bursty than he did post concussion, which thank goodness, glad to see that he's
Right.
healthy. But it is such a funny thing when we talk about running backs in the modern NFL, man, because I feel like DeAndre Swift, to use an example, is your perfect archetype of a pretty fast guy that can catch the football and is tough enough to be willing to play the running back position. And as far as wiggle, breaking tackles, vision, we're lacking in a lot of those components. But man, when he hits that hole, he'll take what some guys would get as 6 yards and make it 20. And if he breaks one tackle by chance, he might get a little more than that. I say this because Roshan, on some of the toss plays or some of the wider sweeping plays, I would have loved to see him maybe a step faster than he
Yep.
was, but that's just not going to change. You didn't draft Roshan Johnson thinking you were going to make him faster, right?
Right.
So it's this, I think, great conversation that reminds me of everything we used to talk about with David Montgomery of what is Roshan going to be good for? How are they going to utilize him for that? He has the skill set of a 3-down running back, and his only blemish is that he's a little slower.
Yeah.
But being a little slower is a pretty big blemish when it comes to running back. So hopefully he'll find a balance. But especially when it comes to DeAndre Swift taking over this backfield, Roshan in reserve, or especially as a up the gut thumper, I think certainly has plenty of legs.
Yeah, I'm gonna push back a little bit on that.
Do it.
I think that DeAndre Swift is a little bit more of a slasher type. He's got a great dead leg, man. I would say one of the best dead legs in the NFL.
Oh,
So I
yeah.
think he's
I don't want to say he's got no cut. He's just got one cut.
oh yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, I've seen him string a couple of those together.
Okay.
Again, y'all, I was a huge Swift truther out of
That's
college.
true. That's
Don't make me
true.
get the receipts, okay? Where I was like, he's my RB1 in the class at one point. Like, I was huge on Swift. So, um, I would say one of my pushbacks on him is I would like him to run straight more often. I think sometimes he's trying to make more cuts than he needs to, which reminds me a little bit of Montgomery. Um, I and Roshan too. Again, he's 220, so again, carrying a lot more weight, I think, is holding him back. But yeah, not as bursty. You're right. Um,
Never want to make
Herbert,
it
the issue with what was that?
I never want to make it sound like I'm trying to say Roshan Johnson is bad. This isn't that simple, right?
Mm,
It's more that there are a couple of those wider runs where Herbert or Swift is going to
yeah,
get more out of it, and those can be huge hitters for your run game. And
right.
so it's it's not even a complaint. It's more just sizing up the team. We haven't even gotten to the backup D line yet.
No, well,
So-
but hold on. So the other thing I want to add to this is so if you look at
exactly.
all of those again, we haven't seen Swift. So I guess of Herbert and Johnson, besides Herbert being a little bit quicker, he's just smooth. That's the thing is like,
Yes.
he's gonna make the good decisions. He's gonna press the hole. He's gonna cut back. But the thing that he doesn't do as well is catch the football of the other two. So again, it's a big mix and match. But again, I thought they both looked well. And I want to keep them. If we transition, then I guess you want to talk about D line because our guy Austin Booker got a sack.
Oh yeah, really enjoyed it. I do want to say one more thing about Herbert because Nick, I feel like the more I hear dialogue about running back vision, right? Because we've all seen the tweets of people who will point out a running back that is running, let's say, through the C gap, and they'll look at the left side A gap and they'll say, "This is wide open. What are we doing not running into this?" And besides the fact that reading keys is more complicated than that, I do want to acknowledge the same thing that we talk about with quarterbacks. There's an element of feel to vision that you either have or you don't. There are guys who can feel that the defense is over pursuing to the left, and if they cut back to the right, they could have all kinds of space. And then there are guys that think they feel that, they cut back, and they get smoked by a surfing defensive end
Aw.
for a massive tackle for loss. I mean, it happens, and I'm saying this to point out that Khalil Herbert has got that. There are
Yes.
points where he's up that, let's say, right side A gap, and then you see him drop his anchor and cut back towards the left side of the field and find an angle, plus barely squeezing by a linebacker that's one step too far to the right. And then suddenly he's in the open field for 9 to 11 yards. That is the essence of being a runner in the NFL. It's part of why he's always been a leader in that stat somebody created, rush yards over expectation.
Yep.
And so I'm really interested in what the Bears are not liking in Herbert. Like that seems clear, right?
Yeah.
Let's just say the elephant in the room, right? The Bears seem to not like Khalil Herbert that much. I
Yeah.
don't know why. This goes back to the Travis Gibson thing that we dealt with last year, where it's like, what are they not seeing in him? I
Mhm.
don't really understand it. But
Yeah.
maybe this is all a cue, being completely honest with you, Nick, maybe it's all a cue that the Bears intend to throw the ball a lot more than we think they will,
Mhm.
given that they have a rookie quarterback and we just assume that they're going to run the ball a lot. And they've been running the ball in Chicago
Mhm.
as long as I've been alive. So maybe the pass catching element of this run game is something that they think is that important. Dude, I don't know. But Herbert can tote the pill. That's not a question. And he
Yeah,
did
well,
it again last night.
you look like he's had multiple years of looking good running the ball, but with, Poles and Eberflus, they drafted Roshan in round 4. They signed Swift to a good contract. Like, the writing's on the wall. Like, yeah, he's not exactly what they want. And again, I talked about this last episode. I mean, the running backs were 32nd EPA per target. And so, like, that's you have to get better at that. And so maybe that's a big deal with it. Um, Offensive line wise, I didn't see anything that was super great or super bad. Did you have any guys on there you wanted to chat about?
Watching 11 to especially 30 guys in detail is so difficult
Right.
that I'm going to need to rewatch the game to have any notes on the offensive line.
Sure.
All I can say is I didn't think that the offensive line got pushed when they needed it, and their guards seem like they're letting them down in a lot of that department. Which, yeah, I'm hinging a lot of that on the 3rd and 1 where Roshan got blown up twice, and it was a miracle he didn't go down the first time.
Mhm.
But it also felt like on their other Roshan and Khalil inside runs, it took at least one cutback to make a play. And I'm sure there's going to be elements of that that aren't fair, but the offensive line, it didn't feel like either line played particularly well. You had
No.
some guys like I liked what Austin Booker did. Can we? You want to blend both trenches as we talk about
Sure,
this?
sure, yeah, yeah, that's fine,
I,
yeah. So, I mean, like, what's interesting with the Austin Booker sack, because I watched it multiple times, is and again, this is from a distance without, like, again, we don't have the all 22 or any of that stuff yet. I thought he long-armed into cutting underneath the tackle. Is that what you saw?
I saw something similar. I mean,
Okay.
what I really saw when you go back and you look at about 5, I could highlight them for you if you want. But if you look at about 5 of Booker's reps last night, and five's not a small number, he kept putting his tackle on skates. Again,
Mhm,
maybe there's a surface element to this, but I expected Austin Booker to flash speed, and he showed more power than I anticipated. That's really important because when an edge rusher can convert speed to power, it opens up methods of attacking a guy like Braxton, who can neutralize many speed rushers because he's so long. But if you go straight through his chest, you have a little more access to the quarterback.
mhm.
It felt to me, Nick, like Booker was forcing his tackle to fight for his life. And stylistically, that's a lot more of what I'm looking for than a whoopsie sack. Booker was creating pressure. He was consistently pressing towards the quarterback or getting past his offensive line. The coverage wasn't holding. That's life sometimes. But it
Mhm.
looked to me like he had another rep the first 3rd down of his game where he had outright pressure. And then the sack seemed like it was earned. What did you
Yeah.
think?
Yeah, I mean, heavy hands, which again,
Hmm.
surprising. I didn't expect it. I did see him get moved a little bit in the run game, which I mean, I think is can be a little expected. Other D linemen, I guess, just of note, Zach Pickens, a guy that we want to see something from. I saw very inconsistent from him. Again, Houston's a lot of outside zone, just like we are. So D linemen aren't getting penetration, y'all. They have to get ahead of the linemen pulling, and they have to stay in their gap. That's kind of how that works. But there were some I thought that he got moved a little bit too much, but then some I saw he got a little bit of push. So inconsistent play. But the thing that concerns me, Robert, is you're the first pick in the 3rd round last year. You should look like that guy and a difference maker versus backups and whoever else that's out there. And so I didn't see that. That was concerning. I thought Daniel Hardy and Khalil Kareem, they looked decent on the edge at times. I saw some pressure. I saw some decent effort, which is what you want out of those extra edgy guys. So I thought that they kind of fought for it. And I saw a couple plays by Brian Coward too.
Yeah, that's kind of the elephant in the room, don't you think, Nick? I mean, look, statistically, you're not going to hit on all your draft picks. And I certainly thought that Zach Pickens' Senior Bowl gave the impression that he might have more in him than he showed at South Carolina. And even at South Carolina, there were some flashes, but we've seen this before where a player that struggles in one specific role, in this case, it's run defense, right? Or a major part of his game that needs work, they have to make choices. And as the Bears seem to be attempting to make Zach Pickens a nose tackle, it seems to be eating away at what he was strong at, which was being quick and rushing the passer.
Mhm.
So as Dexter flowers and flourishes, certainly we hope the camp reports are true. It feels like Zach Pickens, it reminds me of the Bilal Nichols route, if you remember that, where Nichols looked really fast in his first year and slowly got less fast and became a better all around defensive lineman, sure, but stopped being the special player that felt like he had a nice trajectory as a rookie. I don't know. At the end of the day, if Zach Pickens ends up being just another guy, you live with it. The rest of the draft right now is looking good enough that it's mathematically expected that you're going to have
Mhm.
some guys that don't pan out. But like you're talking about from the football coach perspective, that's a that's a stage where you're expecting Pickens to stick out. And
Yeah.
instead, I thought actually he got attacked and moved at key parts of the run game and was part of why Houston was able to keep a balanced attack alive there in the first part of the first quarter.
Yeah. And it to me, it was disappointing. Again, I know we've talked about this in other times today. It's one game,
It's
maybe
one
the
preseason
field
game.
conditions. I mean, whatever. But again, just, I wanted to see a little bit more. Um, the only other thing I want to talk about from players that played in the game, or sorry, from the game, is I was hyped about the sidelines. I mean, I saw a ton of guys, Keenan, Brisker, et cetera, celebrating Caleb, like they were excited about their teammates and stuff. And to me, that's I know that's a vibe thing, but it's also a team thing. Like they care about the twos, threes, and fours doing well. And I think that says a lot about, I think, maybe the camaraderie and maybe the leadership of this team.
I agree. Plus, I thought that there was so first of all, it's funny you talk about sidelines. I thought I was prepping for something else. Like I loved some of the answers that we got from Caleb Williams in his sideline interviews, specifically talking about how he feels like he's grown in his ability to adjust protections and that that's something that he's really working on, which is great news, dude, because if you've got the rookie quarterback already working as hard as he can, it's pretty standard to work on NFL protections, but him taking it seriously and recognizing that that's a key to succeeding in this league is going to be the difference on
Yep.
some player or another throughout the rest of the season. Where because Caleb brought the tight end in and shifted everybody over to the right, they're going to get everybody blocked, create I don't know, maybe a free rusher that Caleb has to dodge. But if he gets away from that, you're talking about a huge explosive opportunity.
Mhm.
So good to see Caleb work there. Plus,
I mean
Nick,
I mean, with that though, real quick, sorry,
mhm,
Robert, but like that's the secret sauce,
yes,
everybody. Like if you look at Peyton and Brady and like the chess match, like it's all about creating advantageous, formations, leverages, et cetera, for your team. So that way you're not in a deficit, right? The Vikings aren't blitzing and you have five and you're screwed. Like you got to get out of that stuff, or you check into a quick game that's going to beat that. Like
right.
being one step ahead like that, that's the secret sauce of quarterback. And that's what makes quarterbacking so hard. Hey,
Oh,
why
yeah.
why do teams miss on quarterbacks all the time? It's in your head. If you're not shifting and you're not setting things up well for your entire offense, you're not going to succeed.
Dude, plus, I don't want to make this too anecdotal. Anybody who listens to this, feel free to DM me if you think this is a stupid story. I hear it. But Nick, I gotta tell you, okay? I grew up my whole life incapable of playing basketball. I mean, it doesn't help that I'm like 5'5", right? I've got small hands. It's hard for me to control the ball. But beyond that, I shot like Sean Marion, if you remember him from
Oh,
back in the day. Like
so bad.
just the ugliest form. I was never taught to shoot. And so I just took the ball with both my hands and chucked it up there, right? Recently, my brother, this is going to make sense, Bears fans. Recently, my brother started bringing me to a pickup league, and that pickup league is so much better than me that I had to find some way to be useful, meaning that I had to try to figure out how to get better. And what Caleb has that I think a lot of quarterbacks don't, and I can't say this for sure about Fields or Trubisky, is Caleb is very good at figuring out exactly what he needs to attack so that he can work on it. Because Nick, you've done this before. It is harder than it sounds to generally get better. Like, you can try to go get better at quarterback, but what does that mean? Are you going to work on your throwing? Are you going to work on your accuracy? Are you going to work on your footwork? Are you going to work on your arm angles? Are you going to work on your throwing on the move? When you're working on your throwing on the move, do you mean throwing off platform to the right? Do you mean throwing off platform to the left? Or do you mean
Mhm.
attacking the line of scrimmage and getting rid of the ball? When you get down into the specific niches of every single sport and every single movement, practice in general doesn't mean anything. It's all about what you're practicing that you'll get better at, which in my case, very recently, I attacked my shooting form and I've seen my shooting percentage go way up from like 8%, granted, to closer to, I don't know, we're probably right now clicking along at like 28, 29% from three, just enough to where they're not leaving me open anymore. But I point this out because I think that half of the battle, if not more, is Caleb recognizing that dealing with all this protection baloney is a key to winning, right?
Mhm.
You talk about it being the secret sauce. To a lot of quarterbacks, I do think it's secret, right? Where they're like,
Yeah.
I don't want to deal with any of that. Can't my center do it? I don't want to deal with any of this. Like, I'm just
Mhm.
trying to throw the ball. Man, I'm having enough time, or I'm having enough trouble reading the defensive look as it is. Can you guys just handle this? But Caleb's saying, no, this is a major part of how I'm going to succeed. I've watched Aaron Rodgers. I've watched Tom Brady. I've watched Peyton Manning. I idolize these guys. This is how they won football. I don't want to get anybody too excited. That is the attitude you're looking for
Yeah.
from your quarterback, because the arm talent stuff, you can't teach that, but you can teach the protection stuff. But nobody who doesn't want to learn is going to learn something, no matter who's teaching it to them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, I'm 100% with you on that. So, and again, him talking through that in multiple press conferences just shows you how intentional he is with it. Um, One of my favorite parts of the game last night, besides Chicago winning, was the Hard Knocks preview
Oh,
video. Okay. And the best part about it to me was Tyson Bagent's reaction to the signing bonus was he's hilarious, man. Probably
hilarious.
like any kind of press conference that he has, but that video, like it got me juiced up for Hard Knocks in general, but also his reaction that I thought was just hilarious. Like he's kind of grown, I think, well, is he going to make the team to where he's being a kind of a core part of this whole thing?
It feels that way, doesn't it? And
Mm.
here's another question. Speaking of hard knocks, speaking of all of it, knowing what you know now, do you think that the Bears should have played Caleb last night?
Um, with the field conditions, no.
So even not the field condition, like even field conditions notwithstanding, the more I sat around and thought about it, the more that I thought it was an interesting idea to take the bonus game that the Bears had and have Caleb lead team warm up, go through the process of getting ready to start, and then not play. It's very, I get it, like this very highfalutin. But the idea being that now Caleb has a rep at the pre-game part of the game,
Yeah.
and he knows what the sideline looks like. He can walk up and down. He could see the way his offensive coordinator is operating. He could see what his head coach is doing. He could see where the receivers are going through tablets, what all that looks like. He can work with Bajent and Rippin to talk through, okay, this is what they're doing. This is how we're going to adjust to it. But he doesn't have to be focusing on all the other litany of things that he's doing while he does all of that and sees this sideline basically for free. It doesn't cost any reps in the preseason. Caleb said he wants to get 55 to 60 reps in the preseason. We'll see if that happens, but that's a full
Yeah.
game. Like that is one full NFL game's
Right.
worth of reps. So it's not a small number. I can't help feeling like actually that's a really intriguing plan to give Caleb a holistic picture of what life in the NFL is going to look like before he ever takes a snap against somebody that isn't against a normal opponent that hasn't just thrown something together for the Hall of Fame game. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and I think he got some of that last night for sure. And if you look at it, I mean, again, that's an extra preseason game. So Chicago's gonna have what, three more? No one plays in the
Yep.
last one. So you're looking at what, hopefully 50 reps in the next two, but then also the scrimmage too. So, I think still he could be ahead of where some of the other rookie quarterbacks are going to be. Um, Last thing too is I know we're gonna make this a short episode. We got to touch on this. There is some significant news, y'all, that
Yes.
happened in the last couple of days. One is DeAndre Hopkins injured his knee in practice, and They said 4 to 6 weeks. To me, that sounds MCL-ish, but I'm not going to be positive on that. So 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah, it's a pretty
If
major
you look,
sprain.
yeah, that's massive. So you look at 4 to 6 weeks out. Okay, 5 weeks they play Chicago week 1. So the best case scenario is he goes out 4 weeks. He has a week to practice, and then he can play in the game. If DeAndre Hopkins doesn't play in that game, the Bears should be favored by more. So I think that's a significant one. And then the other one, this one is we'll see, but Geno Smith hasn't practiced for multiple practices. He's got a knee hip issue. Some think it might be significant. They played them super late in the year.
Very
But again,
late.
if he has to shut down and it's Sam Howell, we know what Sam Howell is, y'all. That's a big win in terms of the differential, what that game's going to be like with Geno versus Sam Howell.
It's always, dude, the biggest problem with projecting the schedule, right? That at the end of the day, are the Bears going to see Jared Goff? Are the Bears going to see Justin Jefferson? Are the
Mhm.
Bears going to have Caleb Williams when they see Justin Jefferson? We don't know,
Right.
especially that back half of the season. But it does feel to me, not that I know anything, Nick, as if an MCL sprain could really put the hurt on Tennessee a little bit, because that sounds to me like Jalen Johnson or Tyreek Stevenson, probably Tyreek being the better example here, will have an easier time sticking to him, and then it's a matter of fighting the football in the air.
That's
And
true.
here's what I think is so funny about D Hop. If not for a certain matchup I'm about to highlight last year, I would actually still think that a hobbled DeAndre Hopkins could mash Tyreek Stevenson and certainly Kyler Gordon. But Tyreek played Mike Evans last year in one of the most formative games of his career. And if you're about to tell me that Tyreek Stevenson doesn't know what battling for the ball in the air looks like after some of those matchups, I mean, we saw just a couple weeks later what Tyreek did to Devontae Adams, and I still look at that game as a direct rebound off of what happened with Evans, because there were a bunch of things uh, that oh my gosh, Adams attempted that were similar to what Evans was doing that Tyreek recognized
Yeah, you get better.
and got better. So
Mhm.
I'm interested to see how this relationship is going to work. If it really becomes Calvin Ridley versus the Bears, I got to admit, I feel pretty good. The big
Yeah.
thing that I can't help but wonder, same with this applies to week 1 just like it applies to the rest of the season, man. Normally, if you add a defensive lineman, your team gets better, no doubt. But with the back seven in the state that it is for the Bears, if you add a defensive lineman, you should get much more efficiency out of that lineman,
Mhm.
almost no matter who they are, than normal.
Well,
Because,
it's a multiplier, right? That's
yeah,
what Pulls always says. Yep.
this coverage net is so good that you don't need as much pressure as you usually might just to
Mhm.
create more chaos for the offense. And I'm really interested to see what they do. We wanted to at least briefly mention trade
Sure.
stuff that's flying around. So, is it a deadline deal this year or is it a pre-camp deal? I'm really interested to see if Poles makes any moves.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have to touch on the Hopkins thing. One other small part of that is
Do it.
with the new head coach and scheme, missing 4 to 6 weeks of camp is more significant than if everyone is the same moving forward too. So I think like even being prepped and being ready for every route combination, adjustment, etc., is more crucial there. And I'm with you there. So the trade scenarios, yeah. I mean, you're a Matthew Judon guy. You'd like him from New England, who's not happy as an edge
Very much
rusher.
depends on the price. I need to make that so clear. If he
Right,
wants
right.
$20
Yeah. And I'm
million, game over. No deal.
Yeah. And then I'm a Hassan Reddick guy. So one of those two. If it's Yannick, I'm not interested in signing him. But I think one of those two, or I know you always tout this, and actually I'd be open to it. A Jonathan Allen one would be fun as well.
The only thing I'll say about the Hassan Reddick deal, like, okay, so I love DeMarcus Lawrence. I'd love Micah Parsons. I'd love a bunch of other players that I guess could theoretically be available. I don't think Hassan Reddick's getting traded. He just got traded. If the Jets traded Reddick
He's holding
after
out.
having what?
He's holding out. He hasn't practiced.
I know, but he's gonna get his way. The Jets needed to know that, and I'm sure they do know that they traded for him. They don't have any leverage here. It's not me trying to take any shot. It's more like the hardest part I think about projecting trades is actually taking a decent guess as who's available. And if Hassan Reddick is available, bro, I'm way more for that than Matthew Judon. I just think Judon at 32 on a team that, if you're feeling what I'm feeling about the Pats, they look like they're about to be bad.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
a Judon type, getting something for free for him is pretty typical in terms of the way that a lot of these NFL teams operate. But I guess we'll see. Maybe certain things hinge on a 49ers rumor that is always flying around. Brandon Ayuk is back shaking hands at practice. Is it an extension? Is it a thanks for
Right.
everything? I'll see you around. Who knows,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
But the NFL's got some change likely coming to it. It's just a matter of who and when. And
Mm.
like you're saying, a lot of it is going to impact the Bears. And by the way, one other thing that I'll say this is a closing thought. I thought it was wild hearing the way that everybody from Joe Buck to Troy Aikman to the sideline reporters to Scott Van Pelt to Jason Kelsey to everybody in like NFL Countdown, dude, I've seen the way people talked about Justin Fields and Mitch Trubisky. They are talking about Caleb like he's the only quarterback prospect that the Bears have ever drafted. I'm saying this because a lot of them have watched film, a lot of them have met him personally, and a lot more of them have talked to people that know Caleb. I don't want to unnecessarily gas Bears fans up, but Troy Aikman projecting that Caleb, quote, should easily have 4,000 yards, end quote, if he stays healthy, is a massive statement. Like, this
Yep.
is not something that I don't think Troy Aikman's a takesman. Like, that guy doesn't say things
No.
that he thinks are risky to say. So it is wild to me hearing the way that the greater media is talking about Caleb Williams when they get a chance to talk about him. Yeah, you're getting the people that bring up fingernails. Of course, you're getting people that are generating some engagement, talking negative. Negative is going to happen. I'm sure a lot of them mean it. It's not all engagement, blah, 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 lip service, right, Nick? But
Mhm.
the gravitas with which they talk about Caleb Williams is so positive, it feels almost eerie as a Bears fan because
Mhm.
I have never seen a Bears player lauded like this. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Well, we're just waiting for the kind of the shoe to drop, right? Like, "Oh, no, this one didn't work out," or something bad to happen, but you look at, yeah, the talk now, because it was, you know, okay, he's a character concern, his dad, right? All that kind of stuff, and then not a great teammate, and then it was, okay, the contract, and he's gonna want this, that. All that stuff has gone away. Like, you're hearing about him, asking, "Hey, let's pick up the locker room a little bit more." Like, everything is just positive vibes going on everywhere, and I think this is a lot of those, media types that either they're covering for themselves or they're just getting ahead of it because they know, I think, what's happen or likely to happen in Chicago, which is good, like, production from the quarterback, and the team is gonna get a lot better. So they want to be on the right side of history.
And I mean, to devil's advocate myself, we had Mike Greenberg last year talk about how Justin Fields is going to win MVP. So it's not as if we have never seen a Chicago quarterback get hyped. Fields had tons of steam last year. So maybe we have been down this road before, but this thing feels well built. Caleb doesn't have to play that well for DJ Moore to slip 3 tackles and end up giving him a 60-yard play
Yeah.
to add to his pass sheet. I mean,
Mhm.
these things happen. They happened for Fields. They will happen again. So I'm interested to see the way that all of this shakes out. It feels like Williams and the Bears staff are very in lockstep. Like they are working together to develop him along a plan that they all agree on. And that reflects very differently on all the chaotic quarterback developments that I feel like we've lived through, whether it was
Yeah.
Matt Nagy trying his damnedest to sit Justin Fields for an
Yeah.
entire season, whether it was John Fox outright refusing to play Mitch Trubisky under the guise that he simply wasn't ready. We've
Mhm.
we've seen these things, and watching this from glowed up Matt Eberflus and the staff that he and Ryan Poles has assembled feels refreshing to me, man. And
Yeah.
one last thing I'll say that I'm really interested. If there's a twist that last night's preseason game had me wondering if we may see, I don't have any data, Bears fans. This is a gut feel. I wonder if this Bears team is going to end up way more pass happy than we ever thought they might. Because if they like Caleb Williams and do end up with issues up front with their offensive line, quick passing, 5 out, air raid style ball may be the most effective way to generate explosives and to create efficiency along your offense. If they do that, Caleb could throw for, I don't know, an extra artificial 55 yards a game. I mean, it depends. You and I have been planning on a balanced attack that may lean more into a run game. Nick, what if they end up abandoning the run game justifiably in nine of their 17 games or more, right? What happens to statistics? What happens to results? I don't know, but I'm really
Mhm.
interested to see.
Well, I think that's I mean, again, I think that's path of least resistance here, right? Like you're going for a walk, right? You're going, uh, you like to walk on trails or whatnot, right? And you could do a path in the woods, right? And this one is paved, and it's nice and easy. This other one, oh, there's like bars in the way and some down trees and stuff, because we talked through the 32nd ranked pass defenses we're going to face versus 11th ranked rush defenses that we're going to face. You look at the weapons that he has to throw to, and Caleb Williams' ability, let's just be honest there, versus DeAndre Swift is not a top 10 back in the league. Okay. Like we just don't have that. The run game blocking last year wasn't as good as it was the year before. Like you just go through back and forth all these things. I think it generally leads to that, Robert. And it makes me wonder if the Bears are going to be more of pass to set up the run than run to set up the pass like it's been in the past.
I agree. Dude, I'm stoked. I feel like all of this blends so well. And I mean, it could be the euphoria that you get watching your team rally back with 3 big time touchdown drives and a sick 2-minute drill and a
Yeah.
quarterback just stapling the ball on people's hands and the preseason game literally getting canceled right as it got boring. I mean, couldn't have asked for better.
Stop the count.
Truly, it was like, don't bring it back. They just take the win. But what is your final take, if you will, on Hall of Fame Game 1?
Mine was honestly, it was good to see, I think. Football again, the new kickoff rule was interesting. But also the Hall of Famers, man. Like,
Yes.
Mongo and Hester, you could just tell like Hester wanted to go out there and try the kickoff thing. And you could just see that again, he's always gonna have like that little kid in him wanting to play. Um and still Peppers too, just the respect of those guys and still the other ones, man. I loved Patrick Willis growing up. I wish he would have played longer, but respect to him for his life choices there. And Andre Johnson was a monster forever. Like going through all those guys, the Hall of Fame game is just good vibes. And I left last night with a lot of good vibes.
Good vibes is a great way to put it. I thought it was very typical Bears giving up the opening touchdown on a long drive that felt like it was a given, and then immediately coming out the other way, getting down to that 3rd and 1, not getting it, false start, punt, and it wasn't even Tory Taylor doing the punt. I was like, this, why did I turn this on? Like, I'm never going to say that often, guys, but for the Hall of Fame game, I was like,
Tory Taylor had some good holds though. Extra points.
he can hold, but he
The
can't swing the
kickoff,
leg. Come on. Come
dude.
on.
He's a good holder. He's got it.
Anyways. Kickoff was interesting. It looks like it's going to take a hot minute before special teams coaches crack how to win on
Well,
this thing.
they're
But
also not going to show it, man, in the preseason either.
100%, they're not going to do any of their weird stuff. But I
Mm.
mean, it kind of makes sense in the element of if you count the kicker as a tackler, the defense is +2 consistently because what's the other receiver really going to do? Like if you've got Tyler Scott and Valus as one of them has to be the fullback for the other, that's not going to get you very far. But
Mhm.
so all this to say, it's fun to see the pomp and circumstance of football come back. Um, the DeAndre Hopkins news, you never like reading about injuries, but that is fortuitous based on the Bears' current track of things. I think this probably goes without saying, Nick, their ability to bottle Will Levis and the Titans' passing attack is how you win that game. Yeah, of course, you'd love to score 35 points, but you just can't bet on that. So,
Mhm.
in lieu of that, you're looking to hold Levis and his cadre to under, let's say, 16 points. And if you can do that, well, a hurt DeAndre Hopkins will help you get there.
Yeah.
So, we've got way more coming up. way more coming up, especially because as we get deeper and deeper into the preseason, we'll get to start seeing some of Caleb's reps. I'm intrigued to see how this stuff between Rippon and Bajent will play out because, I mean, as much as you and I aren't making too much of a meal of this, Nick, if Bajent does have 2 to 3 lackluster preseason games, especially from this point, while Rippon just keeps pounding the ball in the end zone, there's going to be a decision that any sane coach would have to make in that kind of scenario. I just think it's premature to start saying there's any sense in thinking about it now. But we'll get there when we get there. Bears fans, thanks so much for listening. Bear down, and thanks so much for bearing with us.